Hey everybody, this is Bo, and I am in Tucson, Arizona, excited to share with you from the book of Luke, chapter 6, starting at verse 12. It says, "One of those days Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God." You know, the first thing that I get from this short chapel time is that before Jesus did a lot of things, he spent some time in prayer. And if you notice, it says he spent the whole night praying to God. And I don't know if you've ever gotten up at night and you've had an anxious heart. There could be marital things that have bothered you, or there could be financial things, or there could be an uncertainty as to your future. And you just sense a real burden that it becomes hard to rest. Well, you know what? You can do what Jesus did, and that is you could spend the night just praying to your Father in heaven and just kind of unloading that burden on the Lord. And notice it says that Jesus went to the mountainside to pray. Before he does anything, he spends his time in prayer. That is primary. Something that you can do right now. You know, if you're burdened, bummed, need help, cry out to God. You can talk to him. Now, Jesus is going to make a choice. He's going to make a decision on who are going to be his apostles. And that decision was one that needed to be bathed in prayer. And so he spent this night seeking God, his Father, on who these people need to be. Now, I want you to see that the people that Jesus calls and elects are all kinds of people. Jesus, man, was amazing. He could use all of us, every kind of person. And we'll see that in the election that he gives us. Because he chooses one guy named Simon Peter. Peter was a fisherman. He hung out with his brother Andrew, who was a fisherman. He hung out with a guy named James and John, who were fishermen as well. And Jesus called these four to be with him. And they were probably just strong dudes that worked with nets all day and fished and were burly and were rough around the edges. They kind of had a little lingo in their mouth. They kind of have a little twang going. They probably had some words that weren't so great. We know that because Peter at one point says to Jesus, "Jesus, go away from me. I'm a man of unclean lips." So he might have had a few foul words that popped out of his mouth from here to there, being that kind of hardworking guy, that construction worker, if you will, that fisherman of that day. And he also elected a guy named Matthew, who was a tax collector. And if you know anything about the tax collectors of the day, they worked really for Rome. They were there. Rome oppressed Israel at the time. And so the Romans would hire out this job of collecting taxes from the Jews who they oppressed. They would elect Jewish men to be tax collectors. And so Matthew was one of these men that was, this was his job. It was to collect taxes. And no one loves to pay taxes. And back then, you certainly weren't the guy you didn't want to be that guy who had to go collect taxes, especially when people knew that you worked for the enemy empire, right? Rome, of all things. And, you know, these guys, these tax collectors, were really known to also be thieves. And because they would ask for more than what really was required, and then they would take a little for themselves. So Matthew was a guy who was called by the Lord too. We also see that a guy named Thomas was. Thomas was that guy in the Bible who said, "Hey, I doubt. I don't really believe Jesus rose from the dead. I got to see it." He was that guy who needed to see facts. He was the guy who really needed to know. And so he's another guy that Jesus calls and chooses. We see another person named Judas, and he is a traitor. Isn't that odd? Jesus calls someone who, even at the end, we know that this guy's gonna sell Jesus out. We also see that Jesus calls a man named Simon, who we don't know much about, but it says that he was called the Zealot. Zealot was a word that meant something back then, because there was a group of people in Israel that were known as the Zealots. It was like a hardcore militia political party that was against Rome. And here we see one of these people maybe was called by Jesus, Simon the Zealot. The guy who's totally against Rome will do anything to fight against Rome, pick up arms. He's that MMA fighter dude who just wants to throw down, against the enemy. But I want you to see that Jesus calls all kinds of people. All kinds. And you're part of that group too. You are part of that all kinds of people that he has called. And, you can be used by God no matter what. You might be burdened by the things you've done or things you haven't done or whatever it is, but you can take those things to your Father in prayer and remember that he has called you with a unique calling to be used by him in a special way. And you can be used in a special way. Never shortchange that. You can be used in a special way in your life, no matter what has gone on in your life. You can decide today, to start anew. And we see these men all had so many serious issues going on in their life. And if we were to meet them back then, we would be like, wow, is Jesus going to use these people? And the answer is, yeah, he's gonna. So take a lot of courage and hope with that, knowing that he can use you too, even where you're at and in the hockey community and in your family, in any kind of other business endeavors. You can be utilized by Jesus in a powerful way if you just set your mind to it and just come to the Father and pray. Commit it to God, and you'll see some amazing things happen. So take care, guys, okay? You have a good one.